This video is going to focus on post-spawn, which in many ways is the hardest time to catch fish. There's several reasons for that. One, the fish are tired, they're beat up sometimes, they've spent a lot of energy, and now they're just trying to recover, so they're really not focusing on feeding. The other way to think of this, during the pre-spawn to spawn, you've got 90 to 100% of the fish in probably 10% of the water. They're all up shallow, very predictable. They're up in coves, they're up in the fingers. And during the post spawn, now you got fish moving and leaving those areas and they're starting to spread out. And so just mathematically, you're not going to intercept as many fish. So mathematically, the odds are against you and the fish are tired and beat up, so that's against you. But what are some things to look for? So in previous videos, we talked about fish moving in to spawn in these coves using fairly logical routes or passageways from their pre-spawn out here in the points back into the cove or the finger where they're going to spawn. And you try to intercept them at little stopping points like stumps and whatnot. We'll just think in reverse now. So again, if I was fishing this particular cove, and now I see that there are very few or no fish left on the beds. So now we know that we're in post-spawn. So these fish are just going to be traveling out. And again, they will stop at boulders, stumps, trees, roadbeds, pylons, docks. They stop at things and maybe spend an hour, maybe 2 hours, maybe an entire day resting at one of these spots. So now you want to target specific spots that are starting to lead out of the cove. So it's really the opposite of what we're looking for from the pre-spawn to spawn phase. But again, it's a little bit harder because now these fish aren't hungry, they're not feeding, and they're just trying to recover and recuperate. Sometimes they will go back out to these points and just kind of, and you can find sometimes large numbers of fish out there, but they're just not very active. So you're going to have to get more creative with your baits as far as trying to catch those fish. So really you're looking at the opposite of what we were talking about in the previous video. I'll zoom out again and go to a natural lake. I'll go back up to Madison, Wisconsin, and just explain the same basic thing here. It's again the same thing in reverse. We zoom in. You can see this is going to be a huge spawning flat up here. There's going to be spawning going on here. There will be spawning going on around the lake. What I would do, again, this area of the lake is going to warm up first, which means the spawn will probably end first. So if I determine that these fish are vacating the spawning grounds and now they're in post-spawn mode, I'm going to get to the south end of the lake and try to intercept fish that might still be pre-spawn or spawn. So that's one way to deal with the post-spawn blues, is to try to elongate or capitalize on the spawn even longer within your body of water. And in a big, huge reservoir, that could, you're looking at several weeks time difference between maybe the north end of the lake spawning and the south end of the lake. This is a pretty big, deep lake with fairly clear water, so it's slow to warm up. In Wisconsin, you're probably talking mid to late May, and even into June before these bass are up here, whereas opposed to a reservoir down in Tennessee, the spawn's going to be well over with by then. So it all depends on your location geographically, but think more in terms of water temperature. So we're now post-spawn, the water temperature is in the 70s, and I'm just going to go the opposite way. If these fish were up here spawning, now they're going to start to spread out. Now, unlike a reservoir lake, it's less predictable in a natural lake. You're not going to have real clear fingers and coves and points, but what's going to start developing in a natural lake is a weed line. And weed lines become very, very important. That's where they're going to spend the majority of their summer. They may not go out into the deep basin at all. So the bass are going to hang there. Now, every lake, depending on the clarity, they'll get a weed line at a certain depth. I'm not exactly sure on this lake where the weed depth is, but let's just say it's at 10 feet. So here's the 10-foot contour. So right here. So generally speaking, right around post-spawn, these weeds are starting to develop. They're not as thick as they will be in the summer, but they're starting to develop. So you might want to just scan with your side imaging and your sonar and look for deeper weeds adjacent to spawning areas. That would be a good area where fish would go that are post-spawn. But again, just because you've located deep weeds doesn't mean the fish are going to bite. They are a little bit beat up, they're worn out. So it is a very, very tough time to catch fish. I hope this helps, and be sure to hit subscribe.